just looking for a spare charging cable when I found it buried under a stack of old tax returns and forgotten letters. The screen flickered with a ghostly pale light, a relic from a time I thought I had moved on from years ago. One single voicemail was waiting there, dated from tonight, even though this phone hasn't been active in over 3 long years. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pressed the icon, wondering who could possibly have my old number after all this time. At first, there was only the sound of heavy static, like a storm blowing through a distant and empty mountain range. The voice on the other end was my own, but it sounded frantic, breathless, as if I were running for my very life. The recording said to watch the rain, claiming that something was moving within the shadows of the downpour right outside my study. I searched the darkness, looking for any sign of movement, but the trees were just swaying silhouettes against the deep midnight sky. The voice described the blue shirt I had just put on 10 minutes ago, detailing the exact pattern of the fabric. A cold draft swept through the room as the door behind me began to pivot on its hinges without a single hand touching it. "Don't turn around," the voice pleaded. "Whatever you do, keep your eyes fixed on the screen and do not look at the door." I felt a presence standing right behind me, a cold weight in the air that made the hair on my neck stand straight up. A second shadow emerged from the darkness of the hallway, stretching out like a long, thin finger across the floral wallpaper. The recording began to warp, the voice multiplying until it sounded like a dozen versions of me were screaming for help at once. The only source of light began to fail, leaving me vulnerable to whatever was creeping closer from the edge of the room. I felt a breath colder than ice against my skin, a silent whisper that didn't come from the phone, but from the air itself. The screen changed, showing me a live view of myself from the ceiling, and I could see the figure standing right behind my. The figure was tall and impossibly thin, its limbs bent at angles that no human body should ever be able to achieve. My fingers went numb, and the phone clattered to the floor, sliding away into the deep shadows where I couldn't reach it. I had to get it back. It was the only thing telling me what was happening, even if the truth was more than I could handle. The phone erupted into a deafening ring, and the caller ID showed my own name staring back at me in the dark. I answered because I had no choice, my voice shaking as I whispered "hello" into the void of the cellular connection. "Run," the voice screamed. "It's not behind you anymore. It's already inside your mind, and there is nowhere left to hide." The bulb burst into 1,000 pieces, plunging the study into a deep, suffocating darkness that felt like it was closing in on me. I used the small light to cut through the blackness, searching for the figure. The room appeared empty, yet the door stood wide open to the rest of the house, inviting me into the abyss of the hallway. Every step I took felt like I was walking deeper into a nightmare that had no beginning and certainly no end in sight. The mirror at the end of the hall caught my reflection, but my image in the glass wasn't moving the same way I was. The man in the glass stood perfectly still while I moved, his eyes filled with a hollow sadness that chilled my very soul. I watched his lips form words I couldn't hear, a desperate message that seemed to be warning me about the very floor I stood on. The solid wood beneath my feet began to ripple and dissolve, turning into a black pool that threatened to swallow me whole. I gripped the railing with everything I had, my knuckles turning white as I fought the pull of the shifting floor beneath me. The message was clear now. It told me that the only way out was to go back into the study and finish the recording. I bolted back to the only room that felt like home, even though I knew I was walking straight back into the trap. I looked down at the screen and realized I wasn't listening anymore. I was the one who had to leave the warning for myself. I started to speak the very words I had heard earlier, realizing that I was trapped in a loop of my own making. I saw myself outside in the rain, looking in with wide eyes, and I realized the cycle was about to start all over again. I knew that once I hit send, my current self would disappear, and the version outside would be the one to find the phone. The world dissolved into a blinding glare, and for a moment I felt nothing but the cold weight of the phone in my hand. I was just looking for a spare charging cable when I found it buried under a stack of old tax returns and